Boom, we are back. That's right, bullish Bitcoin banter and bullshit brought to you by the 4Bs. But keen listeners and watchers will see that someone's not with us. It's not Mr. All-In, aka the $1 trillion man. It's not myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the excellence of execution. It's not Mrs. No Show, aka Mrs. No Show. It is Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, aka the wife beater.
Feels like, AKA, he actually has a real job now and can't handle the pace.
Yeah. It's ever since this happened. It really is. He
It is.
changed.
He was
It is.
stealing a living ever since I've known him, other than the last year where he actually finally went into a management role, have a team, have real responsibility, can't just moan about everything. He has to fix some stuff now. Barely see him, can't even turn up to a podcast. He's actually got work to do, and he's tired.
He's tired.
Needs his boo-boos.
He does have that 10 p.m. cut off.
Yeah.
He's fairly harsh on that.
He's big sleep advocate. And it's no time to sleep. Sleep is for the weak.
When you
Got things to do. Exactly. So what's been going on? Anything new? Anything fresh?
Do we think Germany are sleeping?
No.
Right.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
Do you know what was new for me today? I had a visit, right? So I had a random pop-up. I was on a work call and I was waiting.
Not OnlyFans.
No, not that one.
Okay, cool.
I had pants on. So and then weirdly I was on a work call, it was really boring. So I was renewing my energy tariff. And as I did it, they were like, "Oh, do you want solar?" I'm like, "You know what? I've been looking into that." So I filled in a quick form. They literally called me 5 minutes later and went, "When can we come round?" I'm like, "I don't know. When can you come round?" Like today? I'm like, "Not today, but tomorrow." So they came around today, right? Came around, and they're like, "What are your requirements for solar?" And that's when, well, I want energy independence. That's my biggest factor. They're like, "What about the green benefits?" I'm like, "Don't mention any of that to me." He went, "No." Like, I do not care about that. Or I do not care about climate change. If you mention it, literally, you might as well leave. And he went, literally, he had a whole presentation and he skipped through it really fast. He's like, "I know you don't want to see this." Like, he just slipped through it really fast. And I was like, "Yeah, good," because I literally do not care. What I want independence of the grid. And basically, he went through it all. And by and large, he just went, like, it's nearly impossible to do that in the UK. We have such bad light in the winter that you're always going to be dependent on the grid at some point, unless you literally fill your fields full of panels, and then you need planning permission, because anything over 20 centimeters, he told me, needs planning. I just went, well, I live in the middle of nowhere, so they don't know, they can't do anything. He went, well, that's your prerogative. So anyway, he went through a load of things, and we got to the end, got to the big thing. He was freaking held me on the hook for like an hour, taking photos of the house, of the roof, and all that. I'm like, just tell me how much. That's all anyone wants to know, right? You know, I've got a rough idea in my head, but just give me the fucking number. And eventually he says 17 grand. I'm like, all right, that's roughly where I thought. In my head, I was like 15 to 25K. And it comes out at 17. So I'm like, all right, it's nothing crazy. But I was like,
And
look,
that's his first offer.
yeah, that's his first offer. But I was just fundamentally going, look, thank you for all this. It roughly is about the right price. I don't have any arguments about price. I'm not going to negotiate on price. It's just, it's not going to do what I need it to do. I didn't want to save £100 a month on my energy. I
Yeah.
wanted to be energy independent. That was my big goal. I wanted to be to almost, so when the grid ups the price of energy or goes off completely, I'm good. And you know what's standard, by the way, in solar? When you are linked to solar, so you literally have energy in your battery, right? If the grid goes down, the default setting is that you go down too.
What? No, the default setting is that I switch over to everything I've been storing,
Yeah.
and that kicks in my mind.
The regulation says you cannot do that. what you have to do is essentially jailbreak your own solar system afterwards. He was basically going, look, you can't. I just went, that's nuts, right? Because obviously I have blackouts occasionally out here. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Occasionally someone goes for a line and we're off for a day, right? So that means we've got no water, no internet, no phone signal. We are completely, isolated when that happens. So I was like, solar's a big factor, that at least it will get us through maybe the one day a year that we just have a bit of a blackout. It will get us through that. And you went, well, the regulation says, literally the grid defines what the regulation is, and they switch everybody off, and including your device. You have to jailbreak your own solar system to allow it to kick in when the grid goes down.
Is that so they've got a monopoly over people that you will always pay them first?
Yeah, it's controlled. They don't want
Yeah,
they want like being attached to the grid to be the best solution, right? They don't want you
yeah,
to be like, oh, but solar doesn't have you never get a power cut.
yeah.
So the default is, even if you've got solar, you still get a power cut unless you get an engineer in to re-engineer your battery that doesn't listen to the grid.
Mm.
Because the grid literally, even though the grid goes off, it just tells the battery, don't give the house power. The power's sat there. It's completely crazy, right? But the main reason I brought it up, right, is I think he thought I had a problem with the price, even though I told him explicitly I did not have a problem with the price. And in reality, I wasn't going to buy. So I'm like, I'm not going to start negotiating on something that I'm not going to buy, because I realized the product is not what I thought it was. So
Yeah.
I'm backing off and going to re-look at this whole thing. But then he started going, what about financing? I went, go on, just tell me. And he went, oh, right, you can basically you can pay this off almost like a mortgage over like 25 years. So essentially, this will save you roughly 100 to 150 pounds a month on your energy bills. So what we can do is basically just make the cost of the solar the same price as that. And so over a 25-year period, essentially, you will pay these panels off, and also then your energy, but your costs will stay completely the same because your energy will go down, but your cost of the panels then replaces that. So your cost on a monthly basis stays exactly the same. And then, and at the end, once they're all paid for, obviously then the saving kind of starts kicking in. But essentially, you get the panels for free. You get your solar for free. I went, that, but what's the total repayable on this? And what's the APR? And he huffed and puffed and looking through his sheets. I'm like, dude, what's the APR? I know you know it.
Yeah.
He said 11%. I was like, that's ridiculous. What the hell would I take a mortgage out for over 20 years on 11%? That's going to be double or triple the price that I would just pay. I'm not paying 17K for these. I'm going to be paying 50K. He just looked at me and just went, he pretty much closed his thing and went, all right, do you do investing and stuff? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not for you, is it? I think we should just wait. Yeah. And he just
Mm.
walked off. He literally couldn't get out of my house fast enough because he just suddenly realized that the classic scam of
Yeah.
all these financial products, right, is just to go, look, the monthly repayable is only like 100, 150. Isn't that fantastic? And most people go, yeah, I can afford that. But they suddenly don't realize that 17 grand product that I was being offered. I'm now buying a 50 grand product, but I haven't realized it because this 11% over that many years, I didn't even put it into a calculator. I'm like, the compounding interest on that, it's going to be nuts.
Yeah.
And the second he realized that, I instantly caught him on it because I'd already told him I hate banks, I hate the government, I hate the grid, I want to be independent. When he went, I don't like the 11%, he's like, is that just on principle because you don't like percentages? I'm like, no, that's just a stupidly high percentage. If you just said 3 or 4, I might have asked a couple more questions. But at 11, over that length of time, that is insane.
I'd also say the fact that technology is going to get better and better, and you're not guaranteed, and correct me if I'm wrong, for any replacement of those solar panels. So the solar panels of today aren't going to be the solar panels of 5 years' time, 10 years' time.
No, same with
And
the
so,
battery.
yeah, exactly. So you're going to be picking up a depreciating, it's not even an asset. You know, it's a depreciating bunch of panels over time that then are costing more and are appreciating in price. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever.
It's yeah. I think he suddenly realized because he was obviously like trying to play it off with, oh, energy's going to keep going up. Like, you know, have you heard about inflation? I'm like, oh, I've heard about
Have
it.
you heard about inflation? Just
I'm
no,
like, dude,
Got a couple of digital receipts if you want to tune in.
yeah. No, just tell me more about inflation. I'd love to understand your point of view on it
Yeah.
and what drives it.
he started trying to convince me that inflation is a thing. I'm like, dude, I'm already there. Like, I'm well ahead of you. Like, don't worry. You don't need to convince me that the price of energy is going to go up because of inflation. Like, I know. Like, I know. He's talking to the. Well, I just imagine he's normally talking to these like old crusties, isn't he? That with their retirement money and they've got like 20K knocking around and like, oh, we'll get some solar and oh, isn't this great? £100 a month. And it's like, oh man, the price of your solar just tripled because you took it on thing. But yeah, it's just another little example of where you just get a little like the outside world just kind of comes in and it was so like because he was so friendly, so like trying to and I always hate this because like it's so salesy, like you're asking them questions that aren't about solar. Come on, like you don't care. I know what you're doing. You're trying to build a thing. You're trying to like make me feel that because you've been here for an hour, I'm now in like inclined to buy your solar. It's like just so you know, it didn't work against me. Like it's you know, I'd much rather you be here for 10 minutes, fucking do your stuff, give me the price. I'd respect you more. You know, you just wasted 50 minutes of my time by chatting shit and pretending that you completely.
Yeah.
See, he's typing in numbers into this laptop for fucking ever. I'm like, what's it doing? You know, I know you've just it was 19 panels and one battery. Like, how long does that take to type in? You know, it's not anything crazy. And
I know young MBA is going to be listening, thinking, Gareth, just let him have a go.
yeah, but it's funny how quickly he turned. You know, once he got to this finance stuff, I just called him on it. He's like, okay, that's normally my clincher, and
Yeah.
it's gone down like a sack of potatoes. So I will bid you farewell. He could not be out that door fast enough. Like, oh yeah, I'm not going to fall for your little financing scam at the end. But yeah, I'm sure many people do. I still
I'm
remember it.
sure
Right? I
they
still
do.
remember it when I was like 21 or something. My mate had the new like I think it was like the first Xbox or something, and it was a lad called Gary, right? One of my school friends. He had no money, and he had this Xbox. And we're like, Gary, how have you got the new Xbox? You know, it's like £300 or something. You know, this is 25 years ago, where £300 is basically £1,000 now.
Yeah.
And you're like, how have you got this thing? He's like, oh, dude, went down the shop and they just like let me have it for like 50 quid a month. And I'm like, right, 50 quid a month? What, you renting it or something? Like, what? Nah, it's on finance. It's like, how many, how, how, how long is the finance agreement, Gary? He's like, 4 years. I'm like, four,
Whoa.
4 years? It's like, Gary, you're buying about 7 Xboxes over that time frame. And at the end of 4 years, your asset will be worth zero because there will
Yeah.
be like about three new Xboxes out at that point. And then that was my first little taste of like, oh, people are really stupid because he just got sold on, oh, I can afford £50 a month, but I can't afford £300 now. So I want the Xbox now. And just did not do basic maths, which is, Jesus, you're paying this over like dozens of months, which clearly adds up to way more than 300. And his APR was insane. He went to almost like a payday loans version,
Yeah, yeah.
where the APR was like 250% or something nuts. Because they don't expect you to pay. They only expect you to do a few payments, then you just disappear. But obviously he was um
He put it on the not the never never, the forever ever.
It's going up forever.
Forever.
yeah, it's just
That's insane.
but clearly it
Quick,
works,
quick
right?
joke.
So many people don't ask what the total payable is.
Yeah.
No.
They just go, how much is it monthly? And can I afford that? Oh, I can. I can afford that £50 a month. Fine, sign me up. And it's like, no, you need to ask how many months. And anyway, as we know, because this is I think, but again, it all feeds into why we struggle to orange pill certain people. Because if you don't have that financial literacy at a very
Correct.
basic level of being able to work out what APR and what the total repayable is, and is this financial product a good deal or not? If you can't do that on just a loan or on some solar panels or on an Xbox, then you definitely can't do it on Bitcoin. You're coming in blind. You know, you're YOLOing in, going, I don't freaking have a clue what I'm doing. And then suddenly I don't, those kind of people coming in, I'm not surprised when they get shaken out because they don't know what they're doing. Their foundation knowledge just isn't there. They're just completely, they're just coming in with some Bitcoin knowledge here, but their foundational just, do you understand interest rates and total payables, monthly payments, inflation, like how all this really works, you know, in the real world? And they just don't. So it's why their knowledge is constantly, they can get shaken out with some FUD because they don't have that solid foundation to go, that's genuine, that's bollocks. It all just is how convincing you said it, it's probably what they will believe as opposed to, because they can't analyze it themselves.
Yeah.
You're taking people from like, I don't do anything with my money other than spend it. And they're skipping the saving bit, you know, so they're probably not really saving or saving anything at the moment. And you're going straight into like that next level up. And I mean, if you don't even save, that skip to there is like, you're like, oh my God, this has gone down. I've now lost this. And they see it in transactions or in days or in weeks. And they think I would have just been better off saving this money. And then they default to that as like if I'm going to do something, I should just do that first. So I think the target market are the people that are saving, not the people that aren't doing anything. You know, they're the easier ones to articulate it all too. I find that when I have that conversation, someone's like, "Oh, I've saved 7.5 grand this year." You're like, "Oh, that's not bad going, that." What are you going to do in 5 years' time when it's worth 750 quid? And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, what could you buy with 7.5 grand 10 years ago versus what you can buy with it now? What do you think you're going to buy with it in another 5, 10 years' time?" And then the penny drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine you're dying and it's like 60 years later and you're giving that 7.5 grand to your kids as an inheritance. Is that going to be a lot of money then? Like,
It's a Freddo and a bag of Monster and a can of Monster, isn't it? You know?
yeah, because like look at our grandparents here. I remember when I got a bit of money, you know, it was like 500 quid, a grand or something. And that was a fortune to them, right?
Yeah.
But they just held it in a bank account. And guess
Yeah.
what? It wasn't a fortune when they gave it to me. It's a nice bit, nice chunk of change. I think I bought a laptop with it to go to uni. That was it. But in their world, that was like, you
We're
know,
giving him the keys to the
yeah,
world, you know,
that's
literally.
happy 21st birthday kind of thing, keys to the
Yeah.
door. Like, do
That was
it.
a
The
deposit
house,
on a house.
yeah.
So,
Like, do it. That doesn't even buy me a sofa for the house. Never mind the house.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, it'll be the same. Yeah. But it's, yeah, I've had the same thing. The dad's at the school ground. Sometimes I'm just like, just talking. I always try and orange pill people and at the very least talk about investing. And yeah, I'm always amazed. Let's go, so how do you buy shares? I go, oh my God.
yeah.
I've been talking at this level and I need to really bring it down because
Yeah.
buying some shares is it's like voodoo to so many people. It's like it's just a website. You just sign
Uh,
up.
I'll go even further. When people have talked to me about Bitcoin, I've said, well, why don't you just start off by spending £20 on a book just to read it? So don't take my word for it or tune into this free podcast that I know. You know, let's just start off with these baby steps. And I see a couple who I know and like really well, and they're about to spend big bucks on a huge wedding, but then have nothing at all to then show for it afterwards, apart from a credit card bill. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I can just see this. You know, I don't like where this is going. I'm worried for you both because
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're spending and spending and spending and
I think
you know yeah, and afterwards, yeah, it's going to be a great day, but there's going to be nothing in the pot afterwards, and you're going to start from square one and say, "Oh, I wish we got into this or that, but
It's
we
when you
spent
tell
it
them the
all."
divorce costs more than 50%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Most people that I know that have made bad financial decisions like that and putting weddings on credit cards, the debt lasted longer than the marriage.
Mm.
So, yeah. I wasn't aimed at you
Oh,
today, Shay.
Mine
yeah.
wasn't. Mine wasn't on a
It
credit
wasn't
card.
aimed at you.
Mine
That
wasn't
wasn't
on
a
a credit
silent
card.
dig.
No.
The podcast is really where we just let off the subliminals.
Yeah. Oh, I felt it, but I can take it off because I didn't pay a penny. Well, no, that's a lie. I bought your suits, but apart from that.
The
Yeah, no,
subliminals will be on there. Yeah, all good.
yeah. Anyway, should we go on to some other dumb
Yeah,
decisions?
let's rattle through these and give the people what they came for, right?
Yeah, man.
Can we all laugh at Germany now?
Well,
Let's.
let's
We we
Let's.
we literally said it. Was it last week or the week before? We literally
It
said it.
was last
Oh,
week. Yeah, last week.
yeah, we literally just needed to wait them out, didn't we? That they freaking sold, what was it, 2.5 billion worth
yeah.
of Bitcoin in the last 3 weeks. And here they are. They took us from whatever, we're probably around 65K back here, took us all the way down to 53, pretty much around here. And then the second they ran out of dry powder, the price just pinged straight back, back to the high 60s again. In pounds, we're back to 52K, up from like, what was it, 43, I think we went down to. So
Yeah.
literally, Germany just, well, they sold all that Bitcoin for a good 20 to 30% less than they should have.
Yeah.
They just sold it more sensibly. But
I
obviously,
don't know.
and that's even like, if we agree that they should have sold it, right? Obviously, they should have just held it. But even if you're going to sell it, selling it in a 3 week period is just so reckless. They got 30% less for their money, and literally a week after they've sold and stopped selling, the price just rebounds straight back up.
Yeah.
So I read something that they had to sell based off some of their financial laws, and but to your point, they could have sold a lot more intelligently than they did.
But laws could be changed as well. Isn't that what governments
Yeah.
do? Right? If you really wanted to
Well,
change the
well,
law, right?
exactly. I mean, it was
Yeah.
based on their holdings, and it also comes on to another story that we have in terms of, countries having Bitcoin on their treasuries. But ultimately, if that was the case, that they had to sell it and it was like 10% of something, then yeah, it's just like who is advising these people? And I thought Germany were quite financially astute in terms of a country, given their previous track record.
But
But
but that was
clearly not.
that was the topic of that was the topic of conversation on the pod last week. It was like, tell us that governments don't understand money without telling us governments don't understand money. Like, if you're going to sell something, you don't dump it in one. You also don't tell everyone you're doing it. Like,
Correct.
who does that? Who
Yes.
goes, oh, by the way, I've got this, I've got this
It was
massive holding of shares in this company. I'm going to sell them over the next 3 months, everyone.
yeah. It's like
Like,
the
which is,
fire sale.
yeah, it's like, and lo and behold, it all gets swept up, probably by BlackRock. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
and then
You're right as
what?
well, because that probably was, because I think even before they started dumping, Bitcoin dumped 10%.
Yeah.
Just on the fact that, well, if I'm a trader, clearly I'm going to get out, let Germany do its thing, and then buy lower. And so those people would have been, weirdly, it was the perfect trade, because they literally
Yeah.
announced they're going to do something. They actually did it.
Yeah.
We could track their wallet, just slowly but surely drain to zero. And then if you'd have just brought at the bottom of that once they ran out of Bitcoin, that'd have been the easiest trade up and down that was actually predictable, because they literally said they were going to do it, and they literally did. Took the market down, ran out, market pings back. But
It's like that Avengers scene, it was inevitable. It's literally inevitable.
Indeed.
but But yeah, so there's Germany selling 2.5 billion. And who do we have today? 500 million. Apparently bought today, right? Blackrock.
Or did they?
Or did they?
Because the price has not moved, right? The price has been flat the last couple of days, and supposedly they bought
Yeah.
500 million. And obviously we've had this. It was either last week or the week before, and we're definitely smelling a rat with BlackRock now. They've bought billions upon billions of Bitcoin, and
It's
the
gone
price
down.
is
Down 3.5%. You know,
yeah.
how does that work? How that maths does not math, right? Like in the last 24 hours, it is down 3.5%. That's just
Yeah, it's very, very suspect. So if I try and steel man it instead of going, because obviously everybody knows how much I hate BlackRock, but let's try and steel man their argument or how this may have happened. The only way it could have feasibly happened is when you buy OTC, which is basically over the counter. So there could be a huge Bitcoin whale sat there with literally billions of Bitcoin, and they can just do it outside of the exchanges. So it's just peer to peer. It's like, let's just say I had 10 billion worth of Bitcoin, right? If I dump 500 million on the exchange, I dump the price. Whereas if I just sell 500 million to one of you guys, the price doesn't change because all that happened was the Bitcoin changed from my ownership to yours. So, I had a buyer. The seller was here and the buyer also came in. So you just exchange it, right? So there's a chance. The only way this is seemingly viable is that BlackRock are buying off huge Bitcoin whales outside of the exchanges,
yeah.
and we know they are buying over the desk, right? OTC is very standard for these huge buyers, but usually it's Coinbase's treasure chest of Bitcoin that's kind of sit there, and they need to refill that. So once 500 million comes out, they need to go back to the exchange and start topping that up and stuff. So you get price movement still. The only time it isn't is if there's a huge whale and they can just buy 500 million of it and it's just changing hands. So, some early Bitcoiner back, one of Satoshi's close mates that has tens of thousands of Bitcoin, if not hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, maybe he sold them 500 million of Bitcoin today. And it's just an exchange of ownership, which then means there's no price movement because it didn't hit the supply and demand metrics on an exchange. It's the only way.
Don't we eventually have to find out once they file in a couple of months as well?
It depends because it'll just say that they bought from Coinbase.
Yeah.
And we don't know where Coinbase got it from. So Coinbase will be the acquirer of that 500 million of Bitcoin, and it's unlikely they will disclose where they got it from. But what we need to disclose, like, if is that their own, like, at the moment, obviously the conspiracy theory is they're not even buying it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
They're just saying they bought 500 million of Bitcoin. They're adding it to some spreadsheet, and essentially what they're doing is expanding the supply of Bitcoin. They're taking it above 21 million, and they're going, no, it's actually more because there's a load of paper Bitcoin sat in the BlackRock ETF. So obviously we don't acknowledge any Bitcoin in the BlackRock ETF as Bitcoin, so it doesn't matter. They can inflate the supply of it all day long. It's not real Bitcoin. You can't take custody of it, therefore it's not real. But at the very least, they should open their audit and their order book at some point and go, here's proof we have the Bitcoin. Like, show us some addresses of wallets that have Bitcoin in them, and it should add up to the amount that the ETF is worth. At least that would prove they have the Bitcoin in some shape or form. But at the moment, they have given no verifiable proof that they've bought even one Bitcoin at this point.
And that's the same for all of them, isn't it?
There's one that has one that has an open wallet, and this is why we can't be trusted, by the way, because they gave us the wallet of where the ETF money was, and people started sending it Bitcoin, and they started sending it like Silk Road Bitcoin and all kind of stupid stuff. So then suddenly that entire wallet becomes tainted and has problems with it, and suddenly then the value of the ETF doesn't match the wallet because a load of Bitcoin has sent it some sats. Another example of why Bitcoiners can't have nice things sometimes, because the one company goes, here's our wallet, here's proof of funds. We're like, it would be a real shame if someone fucked that up and sent more Bitcoin to it. So what did they do? They went and sent a load of Bitcoin to it, didn't
Oh, for fuck's sake. It's like children. Do you know what it is? It's that rock thing that we saw the other day. Like you had it on the agenda. The guy's pushing the rock off the cliff.
they? Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
That wallet right there, that's a rock. That address is a rock.
Yeah.
We're gonna send some Bitcoin to it because we are children.
You just know their financial directors going, right, it all matches sat to sat. Hold on.
Yeah. Hold on.
Hold on. It's changed. It's changed. What's going on? Match perfectly.
Yeah.
And like every day, another 420 facts get sent to it. Like, oh my God, can they stop sending like half a penny of Bitcoin to me? Like, it's really fucking annoying. It's like 69 sats, baby.
Every transaction was 69. It's just
Or 420 because
420.
why not? You know.
Oh, funny.
But yeah, it's also obviously the unique thing about Bitcoin, right? Because it's, you know, in any other like proof of funds or proof of reserves, you just need to like show an account that has a bank balance in it, and you don't need to show your account number and sort code to prove that. You just show a thing. So no one can just mess with it. And even if you did the sort code and account number of that account, no one's going into that online bank and like sending them 69 pence just for lols. Like it's just not going to happen, is it? But in Bitcoin land,
That's where we get our
I
kicks,
don't know. You
baby.
say that, but you can put the messages on the sort code, like when you transfer money.
Oh, in the
Yeah.
account, like
Yeah. I've
so
done that.
you might get like 1p blowjob.
yeah, yeah. I remember
Yeah,
doing
I've
like
done that.
expenses a couple of times and had to give my bank statement in. And I'd had mates like paying me for stag do's or nights out or whatever, and all the references were like blowjob, anal beads. I did it. It was like, oh my God. Like, finance. Like, don't look at those references there. Like, I've highlighted the transactions you need to look at. Ignore these ones in here. But the problem is when you do that, obviously it's got your name attached to it as well.
Yeah.
So potentially, if you've got someone in trouble, like they could come after you, right? But you know, I could download a Lightning wallet right now, completely anonymous, and just send that ETF some sats, and they've got no clue where it came from, no clue. So I can do it completely anonymous. Like, you know, it's why, you know, Bitcoin is money the government can't fuck with. No one can fuck with it. You know, kind of displaying its freedom, but then also like, oh man, when you give people and especially Bitcoiners freedom to fuck around, we don't have like to fuck around. But should we move on to another Muppet, fucking Banana Man, Mark Cuban?
Yeah, let's do it. It's been a while since he's been on the show, so yeah.
It is because he's gone full circle, hasn't he? But I didn't
They all
want to.
do.
I didn't want to just put on his early post. I wanted to really make sure we remember Banana Man. So I'm going to play it now.
Crypto Doom. If you're really into providing opportunity for people to grow their net worth, why the hate for crypto? ICO is the new IPO. Here's the thing about crypto, particularly Bitcoin. Bitcoin is worth what somebody will pay for it. Did you ever see someone who collected baseball cards and they were really proud of their baseball cards because they kept on saying they were going to go up in price? Comic books, same thing, even artwork. There's no real intrinsic value. You can't eat a baseball card or shouldn't eat a baseball card. Your artwork might look good on the wall, but not much you can do with it. Bitcoin, there's even less you can do with it. At least I can look at my baseball card and go, ooh, that's my favorite player. That's Roberto Clemente. I can look at artwork and go, crypto is a key that is so complicated for 99% of the population. Do you put it in a device? Do you print it out? How do you keep from being hacked? Who's going to host it for you? It's just so difficult that it's only worth what somebody will pay for it. So I say it's like gold. Gold's a religion. Now, people who are really into gold, they'll tell you that there's a bad depression and things go to hell in a handbasket. If you own gold, then you'll be okay. No, you won't. You carry around a gold bar, someone's going to hit your ass, knock you out, and steal your gold bar, and it's going to happen again and again and again. I'd rather have bananas. I can eat bananas. Crypto, not so much. Look, I can make a great argument for blockchain. There's a lot of applications and they'll be used, but you don't need public Bitcoin, BTC. You can create blockchain on your own without using all the available cryptocurrencies. It's not that I'm against cryptocurrencies, you just have to be very careful. At best, they're a store of value. Thanks, Coins or Die.
So there he is, being an absolute fucking idiot, because even people that didn't get Bitcoin, right, back in the early days, at least they would kind of go, like the objection usually was, it's a scam, it's not going to hold its value. It's probably better to just hold your money in fiat, gold, or other investments. To compare it to a banana is so dumb. Like literally a banana goes rotten within like 2 weeks. So you're literally giving it such a short lifespan. So instead of putting your 10 grand into Bitcoin, you would rather put your 10 grand into bananas?
Yeah, but you can eat them.
Yeah, how many bananas can you eat?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're going to have 9,990 pounds worth of bananas left at the end of the 2 weeks going, well, they're write-offs.
It's a lot of banana bread.
Yeah, like you're going to have to be cooking and freezing, and it's such a nonsensical argument. So for him to be that dumb really needs to be recorded for prosperity, because this fucker said that thing and he pretends he doesn't now. So,
well, the clip, I just tried to look through our very long agenda in terms of, you know, the agenda log in our notes. So I can't recall where we said it, but it was pods and pods ago when we did.
This is I think it really is, like, it might be one of the very, very early pods.
Correct. Yeah.
Like right at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Just tried the old Control F.
Control F.
To find Mark Cuban, and yeah, I can't find it, but I do remember it because I'm sure we even went so far as to playing the clip as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we probably did. Yeah, because I love clowning on him then. I trolled him for a couple of years on Twitter with Banana Man. Just every time he tweeted, just like Banana Man. And then eventually I got bored. But now he's back in it. He's back.
He's back.
So yeah, and he's obviously tying it into the election here. He's talking about Trump, and it's a Bitcoin play. And yeah, he's very publicly a Biden supporter, but he's essentially going, you know, how high can the price go? Way higher than you think. Remember, the market for BTC is global. Has a limited supply. Look, 21 million. He even knows a supply. Unlimited fractionalization. Yeah, technically true, but at least he didn't labor that point too much. But here it is, which means Bitcoin could be what countries and all of us look to buy as a means to protect our savings. Crazy.
Oh,
it's already happening in countries facing hyperinflation. You're like, holy shit, Matt. You need to be careful, because that sounds like you're quite informed and you have made a big advancement from 3 or 4 years ago where you compared Bitcoin to bananas. Now you are suddenly going, it's a genuinely hedge against inflation and is a way of protecting your savings. So you're saying it's a better form of money than dollars, right? That's what you're saying. Correct. You are correct.
He does say at the end, you know, the possibility of it becoming everything the Maxis envisioned, and it's like that hands up moment, you know, isn't it?
Yeah,
you got to take that humbly.
What's always interesting is that these guys, supposedly very smart, but equally had one-upsmanship in terms of, I feel they could have been on the train super early and they just refuted it. They're like, no. And now they're coming back around as the meme is, when it's super high. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, right. I might get onto this, or now I accept this. It's like, dude, you could have accepted when it was in single figures.
But what's that expression? Everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at Portney.
Yeah. You've been wrecked numerous times.
He's coming
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, he does seem to get it now to a certain degree, and that's the thing, isn't it? I think a lot of people come into Bitcoin and they think it's just a price appreciation play. It's a bit of a get rich quick scam. They downplay that what the maxis say. We're just in a cult, we're in a religion, we're not thinking. They're just nuts. They're right wing extreme racists and all that kind of stuff.
All true.
But they don't really believe in the ethos of Bitcoin. But as we always say, you come for the gains and you stay for the revolution. And
Yeah.
it just sometimes it takes a little bit longer for people to figure out that the revolution that we're here for is actually real. And and I think especially for billionaires like Mark Cuban, they're so far away from giving a shit about inflation. Like I always say, that inflation only matters if you're poor, really, because the inflation largely just affects your energy bills, your food bills. They go up by 10, 20%. If you're poor and like don't have a huge amount of money left over each month, then it tips you over into the red. If you're a billionaire, a lot of your costs are just ridiculous, right? And the fact that your food's gone up by 20%, you don't even notice it. Like food is such a tiny bill. You're doing private jets around the world, you're doing holidays, you're investing in this and that. Inflation literally does not affect you. So I think it's one of the reasons why it takes them quite a bit longer to realize that no, but inflation on the ground for normal people that earn the average salary is hugely important. And if inflation continues at the speed it is continuing, there will be a flight from that money. There has to be, because people cannot survive unless they do find a life raft. So it seems like he's genuinely gone, oh, right, yeah, to protect our savings. Because obviously for people, if you've got like, 5 billion in a bank account, you don't really care if it rots away at 5-10% a year, because it's going to take a lot of years for that to really go down. And obviously they don't anyway. They shove it into property, they shove it into investments. They'll pay someone like 4 million a year just to manage that money and make it grow by 10 million a year. So it's just, I don't know, they're just so far away from the problems that is money. But for someone that at the end of the month they got £200 to like treat themselves, when inflation goes up by 10% in a year, suddenly that £200 is gone. And that is huge to them. That is now that night out, that meal out, that trip out with the kids, that saving for the summer holiday, the saving for a new car, or if the dishwasher breaks, you need to replace it. You now can't do any of those things.
Yeah.
You are constantly on zero. And the second something bad happens in your life, you're now in the red. And there is that helplessness and just a state of, what am I even living and working for? Because I'm just treading water. And it's nice to see Mark Cuban finally on the Bitcoin bus. It's interesting that Trump seems to be the trigger. We've mentioned Trump a few times on here. He's been very positive towards Bitcoin. And who knows, maybe Trump is orange pilling some people here. As much as we think it's a bit of a vote winner, he probably doesn't really believe in it. He's clearly a dollar person first, Bitcoin 15th. So we know what he's doing with it. But by accident, maybe he is starting to turn some people into going, why is he talking about Bitcoin? I thought Bitcoin is a scam. And they've looked into it a little bit more and gone, oh, what? Oh, I see what he's doing here. There's quite a big following, and a lot of people that are suffering from the cost of living crisis that is happening globally are buying Bitcoin for this reason. Oh, right, I get it now. This isn't Trump just, he's winning votes. Clearly it is a vote winner, but why is it a vote winner? That's the key question. It's like, oh, it's a key question. And because a lot of people are buying Bitcoin to protect their savings and to avoid hyperinflation.
So I heard a stat which I need to just double check before I'll say it and then I'll double check it again. But apparently in America, there's 330 330, maybe 340 million people. There's more holders of some form of cryptocurrency than dog owners.
What?
Dog owners.
Yeah. So
Seriously?
that was a stat that someone came out with. Yeah.
They were all Googling.
So there is some, crypto holders in US versus.
Do people that hold crypto also own a dog though?
It was depends what Doge.
Yeah, yeah. Technically, you've got Sheep and Doge and a few others. So, like, is that dog ownership? In the virtual world?
Yeah. Well,
That's
sometimes
nuts.
people. Yeah.
The
Yeah,
problem with that statement is crypto, not Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's the key thing. Crypto, not Bitcoin. But what's also interesting is that this week sometimes we may see it the week after, so maybe on our next pod, the political heavyweights are wading into the annual Bitcoin conference that's taking place in Nashville. So Trump is due to speak at the Bitcoin conference. Again, it's timely because it seems to be a sweet spot to potentially get some cheap votes. And I say cheap because even though it seems that Trump is playing on this narrative of, oh, I'll go with the crypto folks. Again, I will say in this instance, crypto folks, not just Bitcoin folks. From what I've seen and heard is that it's not like capturing our audience is a big swing vote. It's not like, oh, I'm going to be getting all of the Hispanic votes or all of the black votes or all of the people that drive red cars.
Well, like you just said though, I was just Googling it, and it's very close. So basically, there's around 50 to 60 million dog owners, and there's 50 to 60 million crypto owners.
There we have it.
So that it is not a niche part of America, right?
No.
It's a
It's 1 in 6 nearly.
Yeah. So just by throwing out a couple of pro Bitcoin comments, that could translate into tens of millions of votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is significant. Because obviously, what is it? Only 30 to 40% of the population vote. So there's not going to be 330 million votes. It's going to be like, I don't know, probably, what is it, less than 150?
There would have if Joe would have run.
Yeah. Everyone votes. Everyone votes.
Yeah, it'd be right up to the 333.486. Like, they needed every single white person just to get it in there. But it's so it is. I must admit, that even that number though, a lot of it comes from Coinbase, and I think some people just log in and buy like a tenner worth of Doge and log out.
Yeah. But still, that's more than the people that aren't even saving money at all.
Yeah.
It is. If anything, that actually it's actually a bearish stat, right? Because in my mind, when I talk to people, at least in the UK, people don't know how to do investing at all. Admittedly, that is at my age range. When I talk to people younger, like my nieces, nephews, and people that are like 18, 19, 20, they are all investors. Every single one has either a Revolut account or a Monzo account, and they have some form of stocks and shares. It's just part of their day to day. They love it, and they all do a little bit of trading, even if it's just £20 in and out of like a various share, and they're like, oh yeah, I made 20 quid last week of that. I bought myself a top. You're like, this is good. This is very good. Like, you're learning here. Like, I didn't realize that you could invest and just make money on the side and then spend it. It's like really good. Like all the fintech kind of innovation that we've seen, because obviously all the boomers are just, your bank's in the high street. You got to go in and speak to the bank manager if you want to move your money. And even then they'll go, why are you moving your money? Whereas on your app, you're like, I can just throw 20 quid into Google, leave it there for 3 days and like take it out again and then make 4 quid. Like, I made 4 quid. Buy myself
Yeah.
You really have got to give kudos to those companies because it has opened up that market. And it's interesting because it's forced some of the traditional banks to think about it. I got a note from Halifax about 6 months ago, and they've opened up a similar thing. So, where you can start through your bank account buying stocks and shares through Halifax in that same app. So back to that conversation you were having on the school ground, where it was like, how do you even start this? Now it's like, actually, it's right there. You just go and put £100 a month, and you can. I think it's like a FTSE 100 or a FTSE 500 stocks and shares ISA, but it's the start,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, well,
it's sitting right there. Like, just do it.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you look back in time, it was, I need to call my broker. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, people had no access to it. Then it's, I've got a broker. And then a friend of a friend would introduce you to the broker. And then over time, you could place your own trades, but you would then have to make the phone call for somebody to make the trade for you and so forth. And then that person dies away. Then it's the self-investment in terms of, okay, I'll do this on the internet. And then, of course, now in the palm of your hand on a phone. So it is getting there. And of course, next will be the AI trading, won't it? You can already see that
That's already
in
here.
terms of, yeah, it's already there. You've already seen robo trading, but the AI trading of, okay, if I do this now, this is what it's going to look like. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of when I was going around to my granddad's when I was like 5, 6 years old, and every Sunday he'd buy the Financial Times
Mm,
and figure out how his stocks are doing.
Yeah.
yeah.
He'd get an update once a week via
Yeah.
the Financial Times. He'd go through it, find all his stocks. He'd know how many shares he had in each company and what the current valuation of those things are, and he'd go through and find out on the Sunday have they gone up or down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'd be a big moment, where it's almost like, have I made money this month with this week or not? Whereas
Yeah. Do
now,
I get
obviously,
two Werther's originals or just one?
Yeah.
man, fair play to my granddad. He was like, he was like the OG of investing. I think I owe a lot to him, I reckon, because he just all he invested in was oil companies and banks. And
Yeah.
during his time, they were everything that went to the moon.
Correct.
They only went up, and then when he finally went, eventually a little bit trickled down to me, and it just went into Bitcoin. So I'm continuing that legacy,
Yeah.
taking that oil and bank money and plowing it into Bitcoin. The next,
Making sure it only goes up.
going up forever, Laura. Which, interestingly, is our next story.
It actually is.
Yeah.
Anyone would think you planned that.
Yeah. So here we are. A Twitter account called Forever Laura. It's only a little short story, really. So most Bitcoiners don't use Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, how exactly are you planning to reach the masses? That's our question. What do you think? Is that a problem?
Is it?
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I I pretty much only use Twitter, but in the last 3 months, I reactivated my Insta account, which I'd actually had since 2013.
That's because you're single and horny.
No, it's because I'm looking for recipes.
Yeah, pussy trifle.
I am so burnt.
That wasn't a subliminal. That was a straight. That was a headshot.
That was just facts. Kill shot right there. I don't see any of it on Insta. The algorithms on Twitter, most of my feed is Bitcoin and football. So
I don't think Bitcoin content translates to Instagram at all.
I don't either. I don't even think an influencer even if they were trying to flex, let's say we go back to the days of, Lambos, it still wouldn't make them think, let me go and inquire more around how this works. It'd be,
And And that isn't Bitcoin education anyway, is it?
No, it's
No.
not.
Lambos,
It's
but
not.
very much it's about the revolution. And you go, how the fuck am I going to get a revolution across in a picture?
It's weird. I
Right.
had this thought the other day about Bitcoin and how it translates on Instagram or does not.
It's become a bit more. Insta's not just photos now, though. It's like reels and short videos. So I think if you had somebody doing really, but can you even articulate something in 30
I
seconds?
just think it's not cool on Insta.
No.
And is
It-
that
you
what
know,
people are looking for? Everyone's flexing and trying to look cool, aren't they? Like you said,
yeah. You
oh,
know, if
let
I
me
was
educate you on this financial product. You're like, nah.
yeah,
I see some
if I
tips.
was to put the Bitcoin Standard as a book on there, who else is reading this? It would get
There's no
zero
engagement.
zero engagement,
You'd
zero
lose
likes.
followers.
Yeah.
All those 20 to 25-year-olds following you.
I'd actually, it'd be interesting. It'd be an interesting experiment to say, I've recently read this, and this, and I want to talk about it. Because the engagement that I would get maybe on LinkedIn would be slightly higher,
Mm,
but then because I think there's a little bit more intellect there, and I also feel like at the same time, LinkedIn is going more to that crazy social media place because you're seeing more and more non-work related
what is
posts
the
going on.
volume of like users though? Really, like outside of I don't know, a handful of people. I don't know anybody that uses LinkedIn. Like you're talking like people that work sales or business development or product, you maybe, but like the demographic of people, like, is it anywhere near the levels of Twitter or
No.
Well, I'm
Facebook or
sure LinkedIn's user base is around about just under a billion. I think it's like 900 million people.
really?
It's big,
Yeah,
but the problem is the engagement is so low because everybody knows that their boss and colleagues could be watching.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Most
yes,
people under that kind of pressure say nothing.
yeah.
correct.
They won't even like something.
Yeah,
Now, how many times have I
I,
posted something and you guys come in laughing at it, right? And you go,
I stonewall you. I stonewall you.
I've never
why-
liked the post.
yeah.
I digitally stonewall you.
But the
Don't even
problem
know the
is, like
guy.
that like could appear as a recommended post to your boss.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, this person liked this post, and straight away, in your next one-to-one. So you think Bill Gates is killing all the kids through forced vaccinations? It's like I didn't need this to come into my one-to-one. I don't need this smoke right now. You just don't know. So that's why it doesn't matter how many people. And I think I put a post on LinkedIn years ago, which was just like LinkedIn is just full of virtue signaling and people trying to get jobs or people just humble bragging about what a good person they are. It's complete trash.
Yeah.
There's barely any signal. It's all noise. It's why I shoved some Bitcoin articles on there. And to be fair, like they actually got quite a good traction and all that kind of stuff. But I got bored because it's just LinkedIn's awful. But yeah, my
So,
overall response to like why do Bitcoiners need to go into Instagram and LinkedIn and really start trying to orange pill these people? And my comment is just I don't think tracing down people and trying to shove Bitcoin in their face isn't the way. If anything, fiat should scare people out. And then there is so much information about Bitcoin now. There's so many podcasts, so many books, so many websites, articles.
yeah.
And on every single social media that we mentioned, even though like the majority of Bitcoiners are not on them, if you do search LinkedIn for good Bitcoin content, it is there. I'm sure it's on Instagram. It's probably not on things like TikTok or Snapchat, but it definitely is obviously on Twitter. So I think if anything, like Bitcoin is something that you need to find it. It doesn't find you.
Yeah.
You need to have a problem around fiat money. And that's why my response was like fiat money is our marketing department.
Yeah.
That product is so bad and is compoundingly bad over and only getting worse that slowly but surely everybody gets forced to look for an alternative. And when they do that, they will find Bitcoin in their own way. When you shove Bitcoin in people's faces, the default reaction tends to just be they pull back and they reject it and go, what are you trying to sell me here? Why are you trying to sell Bitcoin to me? It sounds like a scam. You just go,
Yeah.
fine, don't buy
Yeah.
it then. I'll talk to you next year. And what do you mean? Next year? Don't you want to sell it me now? Don't you need the price to go up? No, dude, like you putting in your 500 quid over the next freaking 12 months is not going to do anything to the Bitcoin price. I don't care. I was going to talk to you about Bitcoin to help you. If you don't want to be helped, I'm good. Like, please don't buy Bitcoin if you don't want to. I'm good. And I think that kind of attitude is just it tends to orange pill people faster. I think they need to find it themselves. It's like the classic, you bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
They have to come. They have to come to the waterhole themselves, and then once they're there, now you're ready to be educated. Here is the orange pill, but until they're at that point, they're just the horse just freaking galloping around the Serengeti. Like I don't fucking rein that thing in, like, and why? Like just for the benefit of the horse. I don't get anything from it. Like, yeah. So it's I get her point that Twitter is where the Bitcoiners have corralled, but guess what? This is the place where we can shit talk. We don't get banned. It's just text. There's hardly any virtue signaling in Bitcoin Twitter. We rip each other to shreds. It's just all about the memes. There's no flexing about what you've got, what you haven't got, all that kind of bollocks, which nearly all the other social medias are, because they're so picture focused. The second you lead with a photo, that photo needs to be perfect. And on nearly all the socials, like everyone's photos are perfect. Twitter's just text, and it suits Bitcoiners. So obviously that's where we are, and we don't really care. Like even Bitcoin Twitter, I'd argue, doesn't orange people effectively. You come into that world, and you're going to get freaking hounded out. You ask some dumb questions and ask for some follow-ups. You get beat to hell. It's a bit of a toxic place that anyone can survive. But guess what? If you can run with the Bitcoin Twitter crowd, then you're probably deep enough in the Bitcoin rabbit hole to be a Bitcoiner now. But it's probably not a good place to start as a noob, which is why everyone would recommend you go read the Bitcoin Standard, like go listen to some podcasts, like just do your 100 hours of reading or listening first. So yeah, I don't.
Well, there's still no definitive way to orange pill an individual because, as we said earlier on as well, everybody comes at it from a different angle, and their financial education and IQ is undoubtedly going to be different. And so, yeah, those base levels of an Instagram and LinkedIn are definitely not the right places to ever start.
Do you know what though? Mr. Alling's right. That whole I'm not trying to sell you anything. Like I'm actually trying to help you is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
We had a new start at our place, and I got chatting to him on I think it was Thursday evening the other week, and he just like mentioned it in passing. He was like, "Oh, somebody mentioned that you like Bitcoin." Oh, he said you like crypto, and I was like, "I don't like crypto." The first thing about like can we just distinguish? We chatted 10-15 minutes about it, and he was like, "Oh, it sounds too risky. Like what? Why would I actually do it?" I went, "Don't.
Yeah.
Like if it sounds too risky, don't do it." I was like, I'd go read the book, I'd do this, I'd maybe listen to exactly what you just said, listen to a podcast, and I was like, but the reason why I do it is fundamentally because of this, this, and this, and like when he heard that, I was like, you've got a problem, and then you've got a solution, and there are people will argue about the solutions all day, right? So the solution to inflation, the solution to this, the solution to money. But ultimately, there is no asset that has performed better over the last 10 years than this asset that solves the problem. So if you go and find something else that's better than that, I don't need to tell you anything else. There's the numbers. Deal with that. And yeah, I think he was like cancelling his pension.
The challenge is, though, a lot of people equally don't, you could say they don't understand how bad fear is. So it's that unwiring
Yeah.
of that, because when people say, "Oh, it's so risky, Bitcoin is so risky," I'm like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
That's the default. That's the default first thing. Most
Yeah,
noobs,
yeah,
normies, people that have no idea. Oh,
yeah.
it's too
Like,
risky.
you're such
And
a
you're like,
gambler.
wait,
I'm
wait,
like, no,
what's risky
you're a
about it?
gambler. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
what's
like,
risky?
I'm worried for you
Yeah.
being in
But
what you're in more
Your
than what I'm doing.
your not risky asset is guaranteed to go down by 10 to 20% per year.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I mean, if
So
that's the
Yeah,
guarantees you're after, then great,
yeah.
over 10 years, every 10 years, the value of your money halves. Right. So all I got to do is outperform that.
Yeah.
But it's not a big ask. But yeah, but yeah, I realized that as well. It's like when I first got in and people would be going, "Oh, you're just saying this to try and pump your bags," And I must admit, I get why people come at it from that angle, because other than me talking about Bitcoin, the other discussions in the office were buy this share. My uncle has an insight in da da
Yeah.
da, and wink wink, it's going up.
Mm,
And nearly every time it did not go up. It had already gone up, and that was the top, and we were getting told the hint at the dumping point. So I think a lot of people have almost been trained that, oh, when you get given an investment piece of investment advice in work,
it's
it's
bad.
probably bad or late.
Yeah,
It might have been
yeah,
good 6 months ago. It is now bad and old. So I think that's where people have learned that from. And
yeah.
but like with Bitcoin, there's no urgency. It's like you find it when you want to find it. I'm already in. I don't need you to be in a week, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years. This is your benefit, not mine. So at
Mm,
some point when you're ready, I'll happily talk to you about it. But it's going up forever, Laura. So it doesn't matter when you come in, you'll make money, but just how much you want to make, or when you want to start the journey is up to you. And you don't want to buy it. My best advice would be don't buy it, because I even say, like, if people aren't certain and haven't done the education, it's like the worst thing you can do is buy some Bitcoin now and buy a substantial amount that is substantial to you, because the likelihood is you'll buy a substantial amount, the price is volatile, it could dump by 10-20% in any given day, you will sell at a loss,
Yeah.
and then it will come back and you'll now be significantly impacted by that, have less money to put back in. So it's actually probably better, even though the price will probably get away from you. You wouldn't have ridden it up there anyway. The second it was
yeah.
a pullback, you'd have got shaken out the market. Do your education first. So when you buy in, you can genuinely hold for that 5 year period, which is always a secret troll, because you don't hold for 5 years, you hold forever. But you need
Do
to
you
have
know
that
that that
mindset.
statement just there in terms of 1 minute, I'm gonna buy, it's gonna pull back, it's gonna rise up, I'm gonna fear like that just blow their minds alone where they have zero foundations of like what's it's gonna happen and it goes back to a really good book if you've read the Psychology of Money, and it's having that mindset that when I get into this, I'm not going to sell. And equally, I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't come at it with that. I mean, we were just talking, obviously, prior to recording about a certain stock and share and, the things that we thought about that stock and share and thinking, a lot of the time, if we just held our nerve and used the logic, then we would have made greater choices. But we've been doing this over a decade and we still make silly choices
The funny thing I find with
or
this is,
lucky trades.
yeah, the funny thing I find is you have these people you have these conversations with, and they don't buy. Then you get that 20-30% pullback, and then maybe there's another 20-30% pullback, and then it's down at 14K or 18K, and they're messaging you going, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't buy." And they're like, "What are you doing right now?" And you're like, "I'm buying some more." And they just look confused. They're like, you've just lost like 40, 50, 60%. You're like, no, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. And then you get the inevitable rise that comes back. And I've got the messages in the WhatsApp group where they're all like, I can't remember what it dropped down to. Was it like 20? Oh, it was lower than that, wasn't it? It was like 21K, something like that, UK money. And I said, like, I'm not financial advice, but what I'm doing right now is buying, you know.
It's not
And
financial advice. Yeah.
and it's gone back up to where it is, and they all come back and go, oh, I wish I bought them, but it's too expensive now. And it's like, oh my god, you just don't fucking learn.
No, when it's dumping, it's going to zero, and when it gets to all-time highs, it's too expensive. Yeah,
I
that's
will
why
look for that
that's why,
statement.
like, if you come into it purely for the price appreciation, you don't get the full picture, because this is not just a stock, it is the revolution. And you have to get the revolution bit. It's like, this is literally everything is denominated largely in the world in dollars right now. If you go and buy anything on a global basis, it's denominated in dollars. In the future, it's going to be denominated in Satoshis. And that is genuinely all the data is pointing to that end game. And once you see that, you go, you have to get your share of Satoshis. You have to. I
I'm
know.
just looking at a few messages where I've said those words. This is not financial advice, merely an observation. Oh, I love it. Love it. There's a few in there, and yeah, scrolling back. Cool. All right,
Speaking of
next.
Satoshis, is Trump getting some?
Looks like it.
No, I reckon he probably already. I don't know. Would he? Would he not? I don't think he would.
No, it's
Yeah.
our next story. It's another
It's
look.
our next story.
Yeah.
He's
So-
trying to link it, but then you
Then you poo-pooed it.
Said he's not getting any, but who knows? It's Dennis Porter, and supposedly he's just quoted sources here, which is always, he's like, this is not a joke. My sources are credible, but then still doesn't obviously list them. But it's huge breaking news is Trump to announce a USA Bitcoin strategic reserve in Nashville. So yeah, he's basically in here. What that is implying is that America would be, just as they had a gold reserve, they would be buying a Bitcoin reserve. So clearly this is, what is this, July 18th, and it's July 23rd at recording, so 5 days ago. Haven't seen any follow-up of this, so this could be complete bollocks and just pure farming, but
the conference is on the Thursday, or starts on Thursday and then goes on throughout the weekend. So this is why I was saying maybe for next week's show, we might see a pump and we might see an increase, but we'll definitely see some form of conversation around, obviously, Trump's political views or personal views, depending on obviously what he's doing and which side of the fence he is, but specifically talking to Bitcoiners at that Bitcoin conference. And we know that the likes of Kamala Harris now won't be there, and obviously, yeah, will be missing out on addressing that audience in particular.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows if
Do you know, this is also a case of deja vu in terms of the Bitcoin that they may put onto their reserves is confiscated Bitcoin, of course, from obviously the likes of illicit activities that have gone on. And so it's not like it's a strategic play of, we are the US, we believe in Bitcoin, we're going to put some of our hard-earned treasuries money into this asset. It's more, no, we're just going to claim it for ourselves.
It's interesting though, because even if they did that, they would still be doing the opposite to what Germany did.
Correct.
So You know, they're not sitting there going, "Oh, we're going to sell this," even if that was where they were getting it from. But I think
Correct.
they would want, if he was going to announce a reserve, he'd want more than just what they've confiscated, surely, because he's talked about China in this breath and said, you know, if we're not careful, then China will get control of this.
I
So
think what they've confiscated is a very large amount, though.
But yeah, it is a lot, yeah. But also, like you said about Germany, if you are going to do an American reserve of Bitcoin, do not announce it before you've done it.
yeah,
Mm,
The price will literally triple overnight. So
correct.
you'll get a third of the amount of Bitcoin. So if so, I guess Trump can't say it out loud, which is why like this.
Without doing it, this is.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, he can't do it until he's president. So
yeah,
he can't run with it as his candidacy to go, I'll build a Bitcoin reserve. Because if he even says that, straight away the price of Bitcoin will double overnight. And then if he
Correct.
gets in, it will double again because they know what's coming. You know, America might buy $1 trillion worth of freaking Bitcoin. So, because like, what's the point in doing it if it's not a trillion, right? You know, gee, they send 60 billion to Ukraine every other Tuesday under Biden. So buying 60 billion worth of Bitcoin is like, what's even the point? You know, we just
Yeah.
sent that in bullets to Ukraine last week. You know, but
But this does also, again, we come back to it in terms of, I'm sure it's towards the end of the Bitcoin Standard book, sets off the domino effect of countries buying Bitcoin and putting it on their balance sheets as well.
yeah, potentially, yeah. But then we also have this meme here. I don't trust the
yeah,
government. That's why I use Bitcoin. Oh my God, the government's going to start up a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Because in reality, it is the net of this is like who gives a fuck? Like the governments are only going to use Bitcoin for control and profitability and over their people. We know that's the only reason they would do it. So clearly, if they want to scrabble over the last couple of million worth of Bitcoin and help pump the price, but it is not in their direct interest. This is always the very interesting dilemma that these governments have because the only reason they have control over their people is because they have control over the money and the monetary supply. Nearly every country in the world right now is bankrupt, and the only reason that they can fund the government actions and services that they do is because they print money out of thin air and steal 5-10% of the entire population's money to fund their ongoing rent seeking. So if they genuinely think that their time is done and Bitcoin is the future, it doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
Because even if Bitcoin appreciates to the levels we think it's going to appreciate, funding government, that will just run out. You can't print more Bitcoin. Their government, if the government was a household, they are running, their income is say 10K and their spends are 100K. So they are running at a huge net loss. So no matter how much Bitcoin they buy, eventually they'll run that down to zero because they are not profitable. Even slightly, the taxes that they collect are a tiny fraction of their overall spend. The majority of the spend comes from inflation. So it's a very interesting thing. Like by moving to a Bitcoin, well, if you move to a Bitcoin standard, like say El Salvador, that's different because now you are genuinely trying to set yourself up to be a profitable government that is acting correctly, and you can build it up from that, which is what Bukele is trying to do. For the majority of big governments that exist right now, the health services, the education, they don't work. They're not. Then it's impossible to make them profitable or even break even based on the amount of money they collect in taxes. It's just the amount of expansion that has happened in every single area of government is so vast. even having a Bitcoin reserve, it might keep them going for another couple of years. Then they'd be out again, because they are hugely loss-making businesses, and the only reason they are still going and still expanding is inflation. So by creating a Bitcoin reserve, in reality, what you are agreeing to is the end of your form of government. Yeah, there needs to be like a 90% reduction of what governments do globally. They need to hands off a whole load of things, which who knows? Maybe this is the first step towards it, where they take a Bitcoin reserve and go, well, with this Bitcoin reserve, we can't do a load of these things. We need to privatize education. We need to privatize health. And guess what? We get the free market gets to go and go, right, let's go and build a load of schools and educate kids in different ways. Let's build a load of hospitals and potentially the only thing the government need to do is law enforcement. And I'd be very happy if that was the only thing they did. It's probably the only thing that I haven't currently found, other than outside of the small Citadel environment. In a Citadel environment, crime and stuff like that, it sorts itself. It's a self-managed issue, where if someone violates what people want inside your small Citadel of like 100 people, you just exit them from the Citadel. Right? You don't necessarily issue a punishment per se. They get but if it's a small thing like stealing or something, then maybe there is a small punishment inside. But by and large, there's no prisons or anything like that. You can manage it to community, and if people are untrustworthy, then they are unlikely to be successful inside that Citadel. But once you scale to millions of people, if we are going to act as a single community, then clearly you do need some type of centralized punishment and prison type service. And I'd be happy with the government running that for serious crimes, but that's all they need to do. Everything else they can just fuck off and let the free market do it. And I can guarantee it's done better, because it'll be done profitably, and there'll be choice. The market will have choice of that school or that hospital. And guess what? The shit ones will fail and the good ones will survive. Everyone will copy the good ones. And by and by, that's what happens in every other industry that we have in the world. But we don't have that. With the second it's government funding, the bad doesn't die, the good don't survive, and in the end, you just get a gravitation to mediocrity, and that's what you get. And then so it's like no one is happy now, and over time it just trends lower and lower, because the standards just get lower and lower. Because there's no punishment for failure, and there's no reward for success. So why bother trying?
Yeah. Should we move on?
It's just picking Trump again. How is Trump again?
You set the agenda.
I was just about to say, who put this together?
Who put this together?
I can't remember.
Obsessed. Restraining order.
Yeah.
He's getting in, isn't he? He's getting in a lot at the moment. He's clearly on his little, but he's negative this time, isn't it? So I'm gonna clip this again, because this isn't a good minute of Trump here. So we're gonna do it.
I mean, one thing I will say as well is his campaign team are doing it. You know, like obviously just over a week ago he was shot at.
You know, packet behind the ear.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you know, he's there, here, there, everywhere. He's on this, and the vote isn't even until November.
Yeah.
And you know, he's doing bits for a 78-year-old guy.
No, you do have to hand it to him, I must admit. I would not. There's no way. Like, clearly he has a huge ego and he just needs this power and respect, because when you put yourself out there at this age, he's already richer than you could possibly be. He could be on whatever like extravagant thing that you think that life can provide. He could be doing
Correct.
every guys now. And instead, he is choosing to get up every day, wear the fat fucking blue suit with a red tie.
Yep.
He got shot at as an inch away from dying. He's back up there doing the same shit.
Yeah.
And this day, he decided to take a jab at Bukulele in El Salvador for some fucking weird reason, right? Where
Well, this is because then he's moving into, I mean, I think last time in 2016, he played the game perfectly, or he played it well, but now he's playing the game perfectly because now he's playing to the people who want, or like obviously the racist or the border control police. And it's like, oh, don't worry, I've got a little bit for you as well in my campaign, in my manifesto. I don't want them over here either. And the reason why they're doing so good is because they're sending them over to here, which is the people in El Salvador are sending the criminals over to the US. But you
Yeah.
vote for me and I've got you.
because
It's
I'll send them
interesting though.
back.
He says there, doesn't he? He says there, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's almost like it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, isn't it?
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's like he hasn't really been successful at reducing crime in his country. He just extorted all the criminals, which
Yeah.
clearly Bukulele is rejected. His comment on here is just I'm just taking the high road. That was his only tweet because he had to, at least to my knowledge, he hasn't done that. He's
No,
he's
no.
imprisoned those criminals in his own country. So I don't know. Maybe I've missed the memo because I don't know where he exported them to. Because clearly there's a lot of immigration from countries like El Salvador to America, but they're not criminals. They're people leaving for the American dream.
Yeah.
It's like when I spent my
Correct.
time in Puerto Rico, a lot of people left to go to America because that was where the opportunity was. You're on a small island and you want to work for these big companies, and guess what? The big companies aren't represented on your little island, like whether it's El Salvador or Puerto Rico. Like the criminals can't get in. If you've got a criminal record, America is just a complete no-go. Like, even if it's a misdemeanor, you ain't getting your Esther approved to get in there. So
Correct.
unless they're literally running out of El Salvador, somehow getting into Mexico, and then just running across the border, if that's what he means, then maybe. Like illegal immigration, yeah. But to blame Bukulele for that is bizarre because he's not in control of people just running out of his country and then running into America. It's like, well, that's for America to stop, right? As opposed to
Well,
like Bukulele loading them up on a boat and just dumping them in America. Like they're leaving on their own fruition. It's nothing to do with him.
well, what Trump's done is the classic half-truths. And the classic half-truths are the fact that El Salvador had a 12-year civil war drove what is thought to be over 1 million refugees from the country, so that those people illegally made their way to Southern California. Now, those people would have been, I'm sure, law-abiding citizens, but of course, they've come from El Salvador.
That wasn't Bukele.
No,
Yeah, so
no, it wasn't. Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
It wasn't
so that
Bukele,
wasn't
but
him. Like,
yeah, exactly. It wasn't Bukele, but the people were from El Salvador, and it's not to say that those people at any point in their entire lives have had criminal records. But so it's that mixture of, well, part of it's true, and of course, as we said before, not everybody reads the headlines. Sorry, everybody reads the headlines and not the depth of the actual story.
seems like a strange one.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we move on to my favorite story of the week?
Yes.
Let's
Property
do
sucks and Bitcoin fucks.
it.
Hot topic. This is 2 weeks on the bounce now.
Yeah, it's becoming a regular staple. I might have to accidentally on purpose delete the agenda the day before.
Yeah, so this is a random tweet that I came across. It's weird though, because it does seem to start being a
That's
trend.
now algorithmically, surgically
Yeah.
implanted into your feed.
Yeah. Be fair,
Random
on
tweet.
Random tweet. Don't even like this. Don't even go on X.
Click that little search function at the top and you'll see property Bitcoin.
Yeah. Who are these followers?
There's someone there saying I hate. Of course, of course, someone's account is called I hate housing.
It's your burner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here we are, right? I do think this is just an ongoing trend as well, where a lot of people are waking up in the property market, where they're going, "Is this forever?" Right? Because here's another tweet from someone going, "The common person has zero idea what's happening in housing. Zero, nada, nada." So there's a load of cope in the comments as usual, yeah, where people are like, "Nothing's coming, calm down." But I thought this chart was good, which essentially is a copy and paste chart from the 4 years before the 2008 crash, and then we've got the 4 years from 2020 to 2024 here, where you've got similar the median sales price of houses sold in the United States. It's back in 2003, it went from around 185 to the topping up at nearly 260, right? So quite an increase. And now we're fast forward on. Guess what? We didn't correct. The prices kept going on because of inflation. So now the average house price is 320, topping out at 440, currently around 420. So, everyone sat there thinking if you're in property, you're a genius, right? Especially if you own multiple properties. The average house price has risen by 30%, similar to what it did just before the last crash. And as always, the property gurus are all like, "No, this time it's different. Property is a safe haven." And to be fair, if you do compare the two charts, like I just did, the high of 2007, even though there was a crash, it's still lower than the low in 2020.
Yeah.
Right. So the price of property does continue to go up. But obviously, if you factor inflation out, then has the price of that property actually increased? And that's the question.
Mm.
And I would argue it hasn't largely. Or at the very least, we talk about the halving cycles, the Bitcoin cycle. This is the big property cycle, right? Where, I tweeted out about a year ago going, there's a big shock to property. Probably happening in 25, 26. Because inflation has been so bad since 2020, it's going to take about 5 to 6 years for people to go bust and to start removing or not being able to afford their mortgage and getting kicked out of their homes. And that's the same thing that happened in 2008. It took a number of years for that really bad loaning cycle of just everybody getting a loan, everybody getting a mortgage, not verifying people's incomes. That went on for 5, 6, 7 years before it went pop. It's the same now. It's not the loans and the mortgages aren't getting handed out willy-nilly. They're probably being relatively frugal with it.
Mm.
But what the people were verified on and the income and their incomings and outgoings, if this was done pre-2020, they absolutely could afford that mortgage. You fast forward to 2024, with the cost of living and inflation and the fact that salaries have largely stagnated, they now would not be approved for that same mortgage. They can't afford it.
Agreed.
So they will go bust. And there was a load of people in that category. And the stats are that if 10% of people default on their mortgage, the entire market collapses. It doesn't matter the fact the other 90%. The fact that if over 10% default, there's a huge collapse. It affects everybody. And so yeah, it's just another chart that just models completely against the 2008, The Big Short. The same model was happening. is the data any different? It is, but it's still just as scary, but for different reasons. You know, because obviously we talk about inflation every fucking week on here. We know people can't afford stuff, but we know the mortgage is the last bill they will not pay.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is why it's the final one that, you know, and the prediction is over the next 2 years, that bill will ultimately fall as well, because people just physically can't afford to live. It's become untenable. So there's due a big price correction on property, but only for the short term, right? It will recover,
Yeah.
but there's going to be a lot of people wrecked in that time frame. So you need to be able to, if you are in property, you need to be able to navigate it for like that 5 to 10 years for the recovery, because it will recover. Because obviously we know people need homes, da da da. But on a short-term basis, there has to be a huge correction.
Where do the people live in the interim? What do they do in the interim? That's the key thing. And equally, knowing that the government and the banks are intertwined, if the people can't afford the houses, which, you know, majority of the, I think last time I looked, the stats might be 60-40 in terms of mortgaged properties versus those that are outright owned, and obviously people pay them off over time. But then that obviously brings around chaos to them. So then does the government step in somehow, printing more money, making the problem even worse?
Well, last time they just zeroed the interest rates, didn't they?
Correct. But can they do that in this current climate right now?
Well, I'd imagine in this transition, if I continue to believe in the 2030 Great Reset, it will be, this is the beginning of the end of house ownership for the majority of people, where eventually you will rent a house off Blackrock.
That makes sense. The classic, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, because who gets the property when you default, right? They'll let
Goes
you
back to the bank.
they'll let you, and the answer is they will let you continue living in your home,
Yeah,
and the payments will be less, but guess what? It's rent. No,
correct.
you're not paying down a mortgage where at the end you own it. You're just renting it off us now, and we're not 200 quid a month off, which still doesn't bring it down to the mortgage you agreed to. Yeah, that's probably still 300 quid more than the mortgage you agreed to that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But they'll go, look, that £200 tipped you over the edge, didn't it? We'll knock it off. But by the way, we have ownership. But you can stay in there. You don't have to move your family out. Stay in as long as you want. But you pay that money forever. And at the end, when you die, you give the house back. You're leasing your house. You lease your car. You lease your house.
Ah, the fact that he
Fine,
says
don't
it
worry
with a
about it.
straight face, but yeah, you're right.
It's just materialism.
Yeah.
It's like, hold on, though. If it's materialism, if I don't own it, who does? But don't ask silly questions. Silly.
Don't answer. Don't answer.
Don't go down that rabbit hole. But yes, BlackRock and Vanguard own fucking all of them. But yeah, it's but for our property friends, take that information as you will. You will buy and sell your property at the price you deserve.
As Mrs. No Show's thinking, I might make a move this year, next year.
I know. But for me, it works quite
Not off
well.
the back of this news. But yeah.
Yeah, but I actually want it because then I get more for my money
Yeah.
and I've got the equity. It's the people that are on 95% mortgages that can't take a 5% drop in price because then they're remortgaging for more than the house is worth. And that's the problem,
Correct.
isn't it?
And then in negative equity. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's that negative equity. As long as, I mean, unless it crashes 50, 60%, then
But it depends. Obviously, if you're moving house, if anything, it could be a fantastic trade if you're looking to move house now, it could be a great trade to essentially sell now, rent for a period of time, let the crash happen, and then buy at the bottom, and then knowing the recovery is happening. It could be a good 20-30% gain in a house price. Clearly, I'm not a trader. The short-term kind of price ups and downs, I'm more macro. It's like there's a dip coming, but it could be in 2 years, could be in 5.
Yeah.
So it's one of them. Like you could sell your house and then you just sat there waiting, going, I'm going to rent until like the property market dumps, and then it could be 5 years instead of 2. But it's clearly all the charts and all the data suggests there's a hell of a lot of people living in houses they can't afford right now.
Yeah.
And but all their savings are going into it. They're not paying other bills. And eventually their mortgage doesn't. But then even once they stop paying their mortgage, it still takes about a year to kick someone out and have them default or switch ownership over and switch it into a rental agreement. So who knows how long it will actually take to implode. And like you said, the government can just print a shit ton of money and in some shape or form just go, oh, we're going to have some type of relief or whatever. But usually the people on the ground are the ones that suffer the worst. And it's normally the banks that are the ones that will default and have a load of mortgages not repaid. It's normally them that get bailed out. The individual families on the ground, they're the one, they get kicked out on the street still.
Yeah.
We saw that in 2008. You say like where the families go. I must admit, I don't actually know where those families went, but millions upon millions of families got kicked out of their homes in 2008. They went to smaller like trailer parks, caravans. That's where they went.
Yeah. I mean that's the key thing, isn't it? They went somewhere because the population increased, but
they didn't go back in their homes. They did. It took them a decade to get back in because
he doesn't listen to this, so I'll get away with it. But my dad actually sold our house that we had at that time. Couldn't have been a worse time to sell the house, and he did end up on in like a one of them static caravans. Was there for 12 months.
There you go, exhibit A.
And it was back in the time when they only used to be open, was it 8 or 9 months of the year? They used to close. And because the demand was so high, they changed it to 12 months. So you could be there all year round.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a holiday park.
Yeah.
I actually erased that part of my life from my mind.
Yeah.
But that happened. Yeah.
Why? So you sold his house at the bottom of the market or something? So, and then he was
forced to sell because of a separation.
Oh.
Lost. I mean, Jesus. I think 30-40%, maybe 40% discount on the house. Then had to split what they took on the discount 50-50. So take simple numbers. You take a £1 million house, you sell it for 500k, you pay the mortgage off, and what you're left with, you then split 50-50. Well, he didn't have anything left after that. Right? But he couldn't afford the mortgage, so he had to sell the house.
Yeah.
So he ended up in a situation where he was renting essentially a holiday caravan for nearly 2 years.
No way. Yeah, well, there you go.
So that's where they went.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Because it's very easy to assume that like now people just end up in a different house. It's like they don't.
No.
They don't. They end up either homeless or sharing in spare bedrooms, in caravans and trailers. And it takes them years to build back. Yet the banks and the CEOs and the exec teams of those, they just get their golden parachutes. They just get their retirement comes early. They get paid their 5 million, they go off and they get bailed out. Nothing happens to the bank. But the people down the bottom, their life's significantly, and some people never get out of that.
Yeah.
That's our life now. They manage to grind up to that. They get smashed down, and they never come back. They're sat there in a trailer or caravan. That's their life now.
And creates the generational curse as well, and the cycle for their siblings and obviously offspring.
Yeah, it's again, it's why like I'm so passionate about Bitcoin, because it's like these big pumps and dumps that fiat just encourages. You know, we overprint and then we have to have a correction. We don't need this. You know, I know Bitcoin is super volatile, but that's purely because we're in a fiat landscape, and it's largely fiat that's volatile, not really Bitcoin. On a Bitcoin standard, things would be so much smoother. So if you do want to take out a loan on a thing, it will just stay consistent. You know, the supply of Bitcoin is going to stay the same. There's no going to be, so provided you can, when you take out that mortgage on a Bitcoin standard, provided you can afford it today and you can afford it in 30 years time, and like your incomings and outgoings remain largely the same, you're good. In a fiat land, if everything stays the same on your side, you might not be able to afford it at the end. And
Well, of course, yeah.
you get bankrupted and thrown into a trailer. That is fucking unfair and sucks. And it's nothing to do with the individual and everything to do with fiat. And yeah,
it goes into it goes into the way, of course, that the way that a mortgage is set up in terms of, you know, the first, let's say it's over a 25-year period. Those first 10, 15 years is largely interest. So it's really difficult for you to pay it down.
Yeah. Again, but it goes back, mate, to what we were talking about right at the start. People aren't taught about money. The first thing that I was told when I took the mortgage out on my first place by my ex-wife's dad was overpay what you can afford every month, because otherwise you're just paying the interest down.
Yeah.
Even if it's 10% or 15%, you know, put an extra £200-300 a month in. If you've got it, do it, because that will bring it down quicker. And then, you know, ultimately, but people don't do that. They just go, oh, my payment's £600 or £800 a month. That's fine.
Yeah.
Then you get to that, you're not building that equity. If the price stays the same or crashes, and it's just, people aren't taught this. No one tells anyone this, right?
But equally, a lot of the time, people won't have that extra.
No, I know.
Because they've also budgeted for, this is my 600, 800 for the month, and there is no extra spends. Or equally on the flip side of it, that's all burnt, so I'll whack it over there and go on this holiday.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one, that one. It's again, I'm sure be revisiting this on Prop 300. Yeah. Or next week.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one because other than gold, like property, the next one.
Yeah.
If you want to hedge your money, probably the default investment is property.
Yeah. I mean that's the flip side of it, isn't it? Of course, because it has been such a solid performer in terms of however a lot of people become millionaires, and it will be through property.
Yeah. That's the boomer generation, right?
But we should say not through the traditional, through property and obviously the easy or of buying a house. It's more buy, do up, renovate, obviously pull out the equity and so forth. Yeah.
And in reality, it's almost nothing to do with property and everything to do with easy, cheap debt.
Yeah.
That was the product that made all that stuff available.
Yeah.
Because there's hardly any people on the planet that can just go out and buy 10 houses. Right. Whereas right now we have relatively normal people that have 10 houses. But guess what? 98% of it's owned by the bank. So they can flip that switch whenever they want into their favor. So yeah, warnings are there, ignored as usual. So we will continue.
So are we all trying to vie for an extra spot on The Big Short too?
What do you mean?
As in, like the new film, there's going to be a second film, and therefore, I want a little bit of a cameo in it somehow.
Yeah. I was like, we were one of the ones that predicted it as well. Man, the only thing that probably even makes you question that the fact that I might be wrong is the fact that so many people think I'm right. I like being I like being I like being the outlier. That I'm seeing so many tweets and like models now that go, oh yeah, it's about to collapse. I'm like, oh god damn it, it's probably not going to then, because normally the majority are wrong.
Yeah.
But who knows, eh? Well, it's still 2 years away. Who knows? Um, oh man, the next story, eh? So we got the ECB president, Christine Lagarde.
Oh, yes.
The risks to economic growth are tilted towards the downside. Extreme weather events and the unfolding climate crisis more broadly could drive up food prices. So Marty Bent's tweet to this is, it's not the money printing, the debt, or the managed deconstruction of reliable energy infrastructure that are driving up food costs. It's the weather, stupid.
I always look at Christine Lagarde and Nancy Pelosi as Dr. Evil 10% dream women. Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Thomas, that'd be an OnlyFans that I'd pay $5.99 to watch.
There you go.
Not my proudest wank.
Yeah.
I probably managed to do it there.
Yeah. A little bit of the Kathy Wood on the side as well.
Oh man, what a threesome that is.
It's incredible financial threesome heavyweights.
All filmed by Max Kaiser.
Oh, that's it. But back to the story.
I mean, what can you say on this?
Clown world, isn't it?
Yes, exactly that. Clown world. Do they actually believe the rhetoric that comes out of their mouths when they say this? Because it sounds like it's coming from with conviction that and belief, but you just think, how?
You know what they say about narcissists, right? They tell so many lies that they begin to believe that it's the truth. And that's this. It's gaslighting at the highest order, and this is just, I genuinely think they maybe do believe it now. They've just said it so many times, it's true in their mind.
Well, Christine Lagarde, she's a convicted fraudster who got this position clearly through persuasion, and like your career's either over or you get the biggest job in the land, but you do what we say. And now she just goes up and reads the teleprompter.
Yeah.
To blame climate change for basically the cost of living crisis. And the problem is there's a lot of NPCs out there that believe this stuff. They really do. And they think that, oh, okay, provided I drink from the paper straw and recycle properly, maybe my food prices will go back down. And you just go,
going up forever.
If anything, your recycling and your paper straws are probably adding to the problem. Only a tiny bit, but they're definitely not taking away. And they definitely were not the cause in the first place. And clearly, the problem is huge government, huge money printing, huge amounts of government debt. That's what's doing the cost of living crisis. And to blame, how can climate change in the moment? It's almost laughable. You can blame climate change for the tornadoes and like the heat waves and whatever, which in a previous era was just called weather. But I understand. Oh, 100 people died in a tornado in Indonesia. Every year that happens, but I understand trying to pivot that and go, no, it's climate change. At least that's slightly believable if people don't look into the history. But trying to blame climate change for crude prices going up, you just go, I don't even know where you try and pin that data points to. It literally makes no sense. Other than clearly it's inflation.
I think that to your point in terms of the NPCs believing it is because again they have no real understanding as to what's going on, and
Yeah.
therefore it's easy to clutch onto it and be like, yeah, you're right, it is that, as opposed to again doing any digging.
It's the simplistic explanation. We've had a really dry summer. We couldn't grow the wheat. There's no wheat. Supply and demand. Sorry, the prices are. And you're like, high level, maybe. But then you start drilling into it and you're like, well, actually, what was the production this year versus last year versus the year before versus the worst ever year? And when you start drilling the stats, you're like, those numbers don't add up.
Hmm.
It's nearly rained every day this summer. Genuinely.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
but then it's too wet for it to grow.
yeah. It's weird. The farmer next to me, that's exactly what he said. It's
Mm.
actually the biggest problem this year. It's rained so often that it's been hard to harvest it because it's so wet. But but yet the data that's coming out is just the hottest summer on record. And you just go, how can it be both the wettest and the hottest all at the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just know, like as you said earlier, like the best lie is that it's got a trickle of truth in it to begin with,
Yeah.
and then you just lie from there, and that's clearly what they're doing, right? It's just the weather's always been a little bit extreme here and there. I remember, growing up as a kid, sometimes you have great summers, sometimes you have shit ones. It's always
Correct. Yeah.
it's up and down, and but now every time there's even a slight increase. Actually, I was watching this podcast of this guy, and he was going how how all these like climate hysteria people go, oh, if the temperature of the earth rises by like 1 degree, it could be devastating. The ice caps melt and we're all flooded. He just goes, just so you know, that is complete nonsense. And from year to year, if you just look at the average temperature in any given country, it varies by 5 to 10%. 5 to 10 degrees. So saying that climate change could just push up the average temperature by 1 degree and therefore we're all flooded is nonsense. Because the UK, for example, that average summer, the average temperature can be anything from 20 to 25 degrees. Guess what? Everything stays the same, whether the average is 25 or it's 20. So when someone goes, oh, the average is 20, and it could be if it's 21 next year, the entire ecosystem collapses. It's literally nonsense because the temperature really does vary by 5 to 10 degrees, pretty much wherever you are, year by year on average. And obviously as an overall rock in the sky and its average temperature, then that's just going on these huge 10,000 year type cycles. And at the moment, we're just on an uptick. So, the uptick is completely normal. The average temperature should be increasing. If you zoom out and look over a 10,000 year cycle, we're on an uptick.
Yeah.
The Earth is warming at the moment. Whether humans are on it or not, we were going to be in a warming cycle. We're coming out of an ice age. I mean, technically, we're still in an ice age right now as humans. We're like a couple of thousand years out of the ice age, but we're not completely out of it. And eventually, we heat to a point, and then we cool again. And yeah. Anyway,
So what you're saying is, like Bitcoin, we need to pan out.
oh man, it's like yeah. It's just like don't trust verify.
Yeah.
But you know how we
Yeah.
were saying right at the beginning how people don't know how to invest, they don't know how to buy a stock. Yeah, so then they get fed some information like this from the head of the ECB. They get told that food prices are up because of climate change. Guess what? They fucking believe it because they haven't got anything to bounce that data off. Uh, and I always fall back on the whole the Matrix And the cipher kind of quote where he's eating a steak inside the Matrix, and he just goes, "Ignorance is bliss."
Mm.
And I genuinely think so many people are in that. So like that little statement from Lagarde there, it's a version of the steak, and you just go, "Ignorance is bliss." Well, why is my food cost more? Climate change, completely out of my control, out of the government's control. So don't worry about it. It just is what it is. Great. Ignorance is bliss. Eat the steak, continue my life. The second you go, no, it's not that. You're not in bliss anymore. You're in a bit of chaos. Where you're like, you know what? My government is causing this, and I should be angry. I should do something about it. You're not in bliss anymore.
Mm.
You're in turmoil, and you're fucked up. And that's why, probably if Dr. 10% was here, he'd be like, put me back in the pod. Sometimes you just rather not know.
Yeah.
So I just looked into, is the Earth still in its ice age? And safe to say it is. At least 5 major ice ages have occurred throughout Earth's history. The earliest was over 2 billion years ago, and the most recent one began approximately 3 million years ago and continues today. Currently, we are in a warm interglacial period that began about 11,000 years ago. So to your point, there's been 5 peaks and troughs, and we are on the 5th as we speak, and we're coming obviously towards the top before we again perhaps we're in the bottom in terms of like the ice age, and it's just increasing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the temperature will continue to increase regardless of what humans do.
Correct. Because it happened way before, in terms of the 2 billion years previously.
Yeah.
All those dinosaurs were burning way too much coal. That was the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. All those plastic straws they were drinking through.
Yeah, they built too many McDonald's, flew around the earth too much.
Need more conferences in Davos to fix it all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
In true Mr. All-In fashion, the last story of the week is a happy one. Not. When I was reading it, I was just like, oh, I felt sick just reading this story. So Greg Foss, who some people may or may not know, kind of been around Bitcoin for the last couple of years, but I wasn't aware because I'm not really a huge X scourer in terms of or on there, but he's not been around. Why has he not been around? Reports are that he lost 650 Bitcoin, which in today's calculations, if Bitcoin is worth just over 50k, is £32.5 million. And that is a hell of a lot of money. But I don't get, and obviously, hopefully, you can elaborate on the story of 1, how did it happen? And 2, how did Greg Foss get to be so deep in Bitcoin and so rich?
Well, on the last point, he was rich before he came into Bitcoin. He came in quite late.
He was. I understand that, but this rich?
Yeah, well, who knows, right? I have no clue how rich Greg was before he came into Bitcoin, but he was like, I don't know how old the guy is, probably about 60, say.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he'd had a very successful career. I think he probably entered Bitcoin around 2020, around that time period.
Yeah.
And then clearly brought a lot of Bitcoin when he came in around that 20k mark. I mean, who knows?
It's probably worthwhile saying he was a big stocks and shares guy, and also old traditional finance. And what I liked about him is that he would openly say, I was in that other crew before in terms of, I didn't believe it until I went away and did the research into, oh, okay, this is a completely new asset class, which my 30 years of traditional finance had never ever told me about or taught me about. And it goes against all the principles of what I used to know. And this new thing is really good.
Hmm. Yeah.
And he went
Who
all
knows?
in.
I think he could easily be worth, 5, 10, 20 million. I think that's completely, feasible. But yeah,
Yeah.
we have a couple of tweets here, right? So the first one is from Greg, where he's going, should I come back? Yes, no. Should I apologize to the UD idiots? I think he must have fallen out of UD at some point, who knows? Or should I jello wrestle him? But whatever, right? But someone retweets him saying, please reach out to my dear friend Greg Foss and tell him how much he's missed and loved by the community. Sadly, he's beating himself up over because an investment went south. This happens. We need him back. If you agree, reach out. And Greg himself replies, right, saying, cost me 650 Bitcoin. So more than a flesh wound. And yeah, so that 32 million Bitcoin, by the way, or 32 million pounds, that's just the losses. Right. And so people have been speculating on what this could be. And Greg has talked about some investments over the years. Clearly he's been missing and he's come back just to tweet that.
Mm.
Clearly he's kind of back in a way, but this is why we say hodl and don't trade. Don't try and be smart. Don't try and outrun the greatest performing asset of the decade and probably of our generation and probably the generation after that and the generation after that is going to be Bitcoin. But people like Greg, they come in and they seemingly know and understand Bitcoin really well. I really liked his talks and his comments on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But this is arrogance that certain people will have and go, yeah, I know I have 650 Bitcoin, but I think I can trade that to a point where I have 1,000 Bitcoin and then have even more because I've come in 2020 and I'm looking around going 650 Bitcoin isn't that much compared to the 2014 guys. They all have thousands of Bitcoin. I'm smarter than them. I'll catch them up. Instead of
Mm.
going 650 Bitcoin is an amazing amount of Bitcoin. Like will be generational wealth for
Oof.
so many generations.
Yeah.
And clearly, the people there was a company invested in that was supposedly trying to iron out the volatility in Bitcoin. So whenever it went up, they would short it, and when it went down, they would long it, and so they'd almost like trying to counter trade the market and just keep it more stable. And that seems to be the most likely company that he has put a lot of money into, and it's notably has gone bust. It went bust about 2 years ago, which is roughly when he disappeared. So that looks like where he put a substantial amount of his Bitcoin, seemingly. And it's just so silly because if you listen to him on stage, he was like a Michael Saylor.
Yeah.
This is the greatest growing asset of all time. Buy it, hold it, continue to stack. But secretly behind the scenes, you're like, yeah, but I'm smarter than you. I'm smarter than Bitcoin. So I will invest in this company that will outperform Bitcoin and gain me more Bitcoin. Instead of just, I'm like, oh my God, the 650 Bitcoin, right? The 32 million it is today.
Mm.
Just hold it for 5 years. You probably sat on 320 million. If you do fucking nothing. Nope, not enough for Greg. I need to push the envelope. Need more than that. I need to my 32 million. And I'm saying 32 million. Right, we're all saying 32 million. I reckon he bought this for more like 10, 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably bought it for 5
Yeah.
million, right? You turned 5 million to 32. Not good enough. I need more. And that's about to go to 320, 500 million. So between 5 million to 500. No, 100x ain't good enough for me because all the plebs are getting that. I need to outperform the plebs. Guess what? You got wrecked.
Correct.
Got wrecked. I'd be surprised if he's got 650 Bitcoin left now.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got 100 or 200 or whatever floating around because it feels like the fact that he left Bitcoin Twitter, this is big enough for him to be like, I know what's going to happen to Bitcoin because I think he gets it and he knows it's going to go up only, but he almost just needs to protect himself from how much money he has lost, which is hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
Another life lesson to everyone. Like, even if you get it, don't think you're smarter than Bitcoin. Like, you're not. Just fucking hodl it. Stop trying to outperform Bitcoin. Like, you can't do it. And here's another guy. Like, there's and like I remember when he left, he was like, "Oh, Bitcoin's toxic. You know, I don't like the shitcoiners calling me out." Blah blah blah. Like, he had so many excuses as to why he left 2 years ago, and he comes back now and he's like, Here's the truth. You got wrecked on a dumbass investment that you did, and now you're triggered to be on Bitcoin Twitter, where we're all being bullish about the price appreciation, where you're just salty because really you want the price to go down because you need to reaccumulate all that Bitcoin you lost.
And make yourself feel better. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's literally, no matter how much the price goes up, he knows his value of Bitcoin will never get to probably the value that it could have been.
Yeah.
Because he's always going to be going. Yeah, he knows how many Bitcoin he had, right?
Yeah.
He knows that exact number. So no matter how much the price of Bitcoin goes up and how much the value of his portfolio goes up, he's going to be looking at it going, it could have been 5 or 6 times more than that. And it's going to forever haunt him. And completely avoidable. Just don't.
I was a big fan
allocate.
of his phrase, just do the math, or it's ninth grade math, he used to say along the lines, and he was a big, simple talker, big advocate for Bitcoin. I remember actually not meeting him personally, but seeing him when I went to the Bitcoin Amsterdam event. He was there.
Yeah. It's nuts, isn't it? They get on
Yeah.
stage and say all the right things, and then off stage,
Yeah.
they're yellowing into various investments, and it's only years later that we find out what they did.
Well, at least sometimes people shill, don't they, and then they turn. But are we saying this isn't another case of one of our heroes have fallen?
No.
So he's still good in terms of he's still on the right side of Bitcoiners, which is good.
He just fucked up. This is just a
Yeah.
classic fuck up. It's just greed.
Yeah.
And he deviated from the path, but I still think I think the company he invested this money in was still a Bitcoin company. He wasn't shilling, he wasn't scamming, he wasn't knowingly doing anything bad. He was just trying to outperform the market. He thought he was smarter than everyone else, and he overestimated his own intelligence. And he's gonna pay a severe price. But yeah, I think he's still a Bitcoiner. He's just a Bitcoiner that fucked up, and we all make fuck ups. So it's just, if
Yes,
anything,
you
it's
do.
one to learn from, because this is
It's a
why
fuck
we
up.
tell people not to trade Bitcoin, right? It's we started the podcast with that whole Germany thing. It would have turned out to be the perfect trade if when they announced that they were going to sell, if you did
Yeah.
sell all your Bitcoin, and then at the end of when they finished selling, you buy it all back. You would have 30% more Bitcoin now. That would have worked perfectly. But that's with hindsight. It could have gone completely the other way, and you could have got wrecked. Like the best case scenario is just DCA in and just continue to add to your stack. Don't come out in and out of that trade because Bitcoin will just leave you behind. And this is what's happened to
Yeah.
him. He's got wrecked. Who knows no one really knows what he was doing. He literally could have been trading that. But
You might see him on a show at
but
some point where he opens up and I'll be watching, and I'll report back.
Yeah, if you ever see him on stage again, I don't know if you will. Like the first question needs to be like, "Where do you lose that 650 Bitcoin?" Because everyone wonders. And no, I
For
don't want
sure.
to donate to your Satoshi address. No, I don't want.
Far from it. Right, I'll bring us to a close. That was Pod 149, brought to you by Mr. All-In, aka the $1 Trillion Man, myself, Sir Neverlooked, aka the Excellence of Execution, and she was here, Mrs. No Show, aka Mrs. No Show, who really is losing the title because you've done it 3 weeks in a row in terms of being here, which is a lot more than Dr. Evil 10%, aka the bitch. Ah, the thumb. The people's champ is letting the people down. Peace.